Okay, it's once again time to talk about sentences. This one's a little bit longer. Sometimes I like to start by identifying the verb, but as you can see here in a little bit, we have several verbs. So we'll start with the subject, and the subject here is he. So let's say subject here. Now, we're looking for actions that he is doing. So what did he do? We've got a few different things going on here, okay? He stood, he also raised, and he tightened, okay? So sometimes we have what's called simple sentences, and sometimes we have compound sentences. A simple sentence has one independent clause, or one main complete thought, right? Then we have compound sentences, which have two independent clauses connected by a conjunction or something like and. I went to the store and I bought eggs, okay? There's a subject and verb on both sides of that sentence. Here we actually have a compound verb. We don't have a compound sentence, we have a compound verb because we only have one subject and that subject is sharing several verbs. So what's our first verb? He stood, okay? So that's verb, we'll say verb number 1. Now we've got this other word, still. What is still doing? Is it describing anything? Yes, it is. And if we ask what it's describing, we know that it's describing how he stood. And since still is describing a verb, that makes it an adverb. So he stood still, adverb, okay? Now take a little space. We've also got raised both his arms slowly behind his head. That's a more complicated chunk of language there, right? Hello. So raised, what is raised? That is verb number 2, okay? And you can see that when we have a list of verbs, or really a list of anything, we're connecting them with commas, okay? He stood still, comma, raised both his arms slowly behind his head. Now, we'll space down a little bit. What did he raise? Okay? He raised his arms. So what is arms? Arms is, it's a noun, but here it's also serving as our direct object, okay? He is doing the raising, and what is being raised? The arms. So he is the subject, arms is the object. Now we have a couple of words in between, and those are telling us what arms. They're describing arms, they're modifiers, and so they're going to be called adjectives. So we have both. Both is an adjective describing arms, and also his, okay? His is what we call a possessive pronoun. So adjective, and we can also say possessive, if I can spell it right, pronoun. All right, so that's another chunk. Now, how did he raise his arms? Okay, the next word is slowly. What's that describing? It's describing slowly raised. Because we could also rearrange the text a little bit, right? We could say, he stood still, slowly raised both his arms, and then it becomes, I think, a little bit more clear what he's doing. So slowly is an adverb, and it is describing raised. Now we've got a prepositional phrase. We have behind. Okay, that's our preposition. And every preposition has an object, okay? So head is our object. Behind what? Behind the head. And whose head? We have his, okay? So it's a modifier, it's an adjective, and again, it's our possessive pronoun. We've got another chunk of language. I guess maybe we can tab over here. So, what's this word and doing? And is called a conjunction. Okay, and it can... Life is hard sometimes. Conjunctions connect different kinds of language, right? So here we have a list, and it's tying the list together. So he stood still, comma, raised both his arms slowly behind his head, comma, and tightened his ponytail. So anytime you have a list, before the final component of the list, you're going to use a conjunction. Now, what have we got? Tightened. Here is verb number 3, okay? What did he tighten? Well, we know he tightened his ponytail, and that is our, do you know what we're calling this? It's an object, right? Direct object. He tightened, so he is our subject, verb is tightened, it's verb number 3. What did he tighten? His ponytail. So ponytail is the direct object, and what kind of ponytail? It's his. So we have, is this the third occurrence of his? his ponytail, possessive pronoun, and it's a modifier or an adjective. Okay, so here, just to make a couple of notes, we can say we have a simple sentence, which means we only have one independent clause. There's only one complete thought here, right? But that simple sentence has a compound verb, okay? So we have verb number 1, which is stood. We have verb number 2, which is raised. And we have verb number 3, which is tightened, okay? Sometimes you can have compound subjects, which might be Jacob and I went for a walk, okay? That's a simple sentence. It only has one independent clause, but it has two subjects, okay? So here we have a simple sentence with a compound verb and one prepositional phrase.